I always forget to tell people to do this. So I'm going to say it now and put it at the beginning of the episode.
Okay.
Please like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, and we are back for another episode of the Bedroom Brainiacs podcast. I'm Tyrese.
I'm Julie.
And we are once again here to deliver you some knowledge / entertainment. And apparently we're kind of going viral right now.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're here because of our nut maxing video, welcome. Glad to have you. Hello. So you should definitely do something else with nut maxing because that's clearly what the people want.
What the people want.
But today we're going to do what we want. And today we want to talk about the Center CD's newsletter. If you guys haven't subscribed to that, or if you're not aware of it, the Center CD does do a monthly newsletter where we include all sorts of information, articles, just lots and lots of things. But one thing we do that I think is really cool is actually Julie has a section called Julie Goes to the Movies. And today we're going to talk about that segment in the newsletter and what we're going to do a deep dive in why that exists. So, Julie, I want to talk to you about why you decided to do this and why you continue to do it and why you think it's important to go to the movies. So before we do that, explain to everybody better than I did what this Julie Goes to the Movies is about, how it came about, and what it is.
How it came about?
Yes.
How it came about is because I went to see Sinners. So how it came about is I went to see Sinners and I could not stop thinking about Sinners, which I think was true for like most people. The majority of us went to see Sinners and went, I can't stop thinking about Sinners. Specifically for me, I kept thinking about the juxtaposition between cunnilingus and vampire bites. And while Sinners wasn't the first vampire cinema to draw a parallel or explore the different kinds of eating, Sinners did it in a way that was really impressive and interesting and direct. Significantly more direct than I had seen it done in many other spaces. So I kept thinking about it, and I didn't have anywhere to put those thoughts.
Fair.
And then I went, well, we need a newsletter.
So I can talk about this thing.
So we had been in the process of putting together a newsletter anyway, because we, do stuff. We have upcoming book club. We have an upcoming couples relationship retreat. We have things that we want to make sure people in the community know about. So we had been putting together a newsletter, and I thought this would be a really cool feature to put in there, is my musings on Sinners. Hadn't really thought about it as it was going to be there every month, but then it ended up being there every month.
I do have a confession before we go further into this. I've been so busy with different things, I still haven't seen Sinners yet. And I think I am the only person in the world who hasn't seen Sinners.
You've read my write-up.
I did. Your write-up was really good. And I read your write-up and I thought, I know everything I need to know about Sinners.
Yeah. I think so that's how it came about. Was literally just, I had an itch that I had to scratch. And I needed a place to put it, this scratched itch, so to speak. And the newsletter ended up being the location. We will put a link for you to sign up for the newsletter here.
Right here.
Right here.
And by here, we mean in the description of the video.
Yes.
Or I'll just put it.
I meant he was going to edit in a little link.
I can do that. But so do a little thing with your hand and I'll make a graphic appear.
Right here.
Perfect. Now you just gave me extra work to do.
Sorry.
I appreciate it.
I apologize. So we did Sinners, and then it was sort of like that was fun. What if I did it again next month? So that is how it came to be.
Right. So my question to you, so that's how it came to be. So the next thing I want to talk about is just the why. You and I have talked about this a lot, but why is it so important for you to, because this is bigger than Sinners, right? This is
Nothing's bigger than Sinners.
the idea behind it covers more than Sinners.
Yes.
So why is it so important for you to write about movies and write about sexuality in film? Why? I know why it's so important to you, but why is it, explain to everyone why this is a thing that you continue to do month after month beyond just Sinners?
Okay. There's multiple reasons. From a representation reason, the first time I, as a bisexual person, saw two women kiss was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And it was well after that relationship had been established, romantic relationship between men had been established. And prior to that, I knew I was attracted to women, but I had never seen that be normalized, presented as just a regular thing that can happen. It was a pretty chaste kiss. And also it was during a weird episode where everything else around it was so sad. But still, it was a kiss, and it happened, and it was there, and it was meant to show connection and love and affection between two women, and that was iconic. To me, I didn't forget it. I remember it to this day. And so I know on a personal level that sex and sexuality in TV and film matters. We interact with it. We see it. It's informative to how it's art imitates life, imitates art, imitates life ad nauseum.
Right.
So it informs how we think about our own sex and sexuality, and it forms what we think about other people's sex and sexuality.
Right.
Sometimes very intentionally, right? Like sometimes, like the episode of Buffy, everybody's supportive of Willow and Tara. So there's a very intentional, like, this is okay and it's normal and allowed. In other things, it's not okay and not normal and not allowed. And sometimes it's very direct and clear. And other times it's really subtle. And there's lots of tropes and things that come up, and it's very... You can get very academic with it and get really in the weeds about different television tropes and media literacy. And I think that's super important, and have offered to run workshops on that. So if that's something people want to do, get in the comments. I love talking about media literacy in that way. But Julie Goes to the Movies is a little less about the very academic media literacy of it all, and a little more about engaging with sex and sexuality in films as like an integral part of what can make a movie a movie.
I think that's something we talk about a lot with just viewing film or listening to music or consuming any kind of art, just with an awareness of what you're watching, not passively consuming content. Just having an awareness of what you're watching and what it means. Is that kind of what you're advocating for, or what you're trying to say?
Yes, that isn't necessarily the goal of Julie Went to the Movies, but it is very much what I'm trying to say is valuable and important about media literacy. We consume a lot of content, especially nowadays, like currently. And in a day, we can consume hours and hours of content. And if we aren't paying attention, and I'm not saying don't dual screen, although generally speaking, dual screening is not great for your brain. But I'm not saying, you've got to get in there with this hypercritical eye and find every little flaw and problem with everything that you watch, because that sounds exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
But if all the queer people die in the shows that you watch, right? Kill your queers is a common television trope. Maybe notice that. Be a little bit aware of
Right.
well, what is it? What are they saying?
Right.
Why is that happening?
Yeah, and I think that's something that you don't. It's tough to notice those things, I think, if you're not queer. It's tough to notice it if you are queer, but it's especially tough to notice if you aren't queer. And I say that because noticing the way Black people are often treated in movies, especially, I grew up watching lots of movies in the 90s. Mm-hmm. Lots of tropes. But I didn't give it very much thought, but when I did start to think about it, you start to see these patterns with the way Black characters are treated, or any character of color is treated, and the way the white characters are treated. And once you start to notice it, you see it everywhere. Mm-hmm. But I think you're right. It is important to notice that, because these things that you passively consume kind of start to shape the way that you view things in the real world.
Yes.
So give us an example of something. I want to explain to people what Julie Goes to the Movies actually is, right? So give us an example of the way that you analyze films, because I'll give you an example of something, and I want to know if this would be a Julie Goes to the Movie topic.
Okay.
I grew up I had cable TV, and I was often watching Channel 16 after 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
For anyone who grew up in the area where I grew up, Channel 16 is Cinemax. For those of you who don't know what 90s Cinemax is, it was often called Skinemax, because that's where the porn was.
That's where the titties were.
Yes. But I remember watching it, and you put it perfectly. That's where the titties are. And the movies would have the worst plots. The plots were hardly even there. Mm-hmm. It wasn't straight up porn. It wasn't straight up porn. Movies were hard R. There was no actual penetrative sex going on, mm-hmm. but it was simulated sex, mm-hmm. right? And I loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it so much. But I can't remember the age that I was when I started watching. And I can't remember the age that I was when I stopped watching. But at one point, I remember getting really excited to sit down and watch it and just going, this is so fake. I can't enjoy it anymore.
Yeah.
It's formulaic. Every movie is exactly the same. The sex scenes all look exactly the same. The people look exactly the same. And this isn't entertaining to me. So I say all that to say that I got to a point where I said to myself, I'm watching this because I want porn.
Okay.
This isn't porn to me. Mm-hmm. This is a bad drama with poorly done sex scenes. Mm-hmm. So for Julie Goes to the Movies, are you picking apart movies and going, this is fake, this isn't real? Or is it a different kind of analysis that you're putting on with these movies that you watch?
No, even Skinemax, I love that people make movies. Mm-hmm. I just love it. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that I like every movie that I watch, but in general, just from a personal values lens, I'm not interested in contributing to the already very loud, constant criticism of everything and everyone that seems to be popular in social media especially. And what I find way more interesting is kind of looking at something and going, why'd they do that? That was an interesting choice.
And I love that. Please don't lose your train of thought. But I want to make sure we highlight that. That getting away from, I hate, and that criticism of this is dumb, this is bad, I hate, this is stupid, and moving into interesting. But why? Interesting. That's cool. That's interesting.
I once told someone that when I die, what I would like etched on my urn is curious till the end. Mm-hmm. And it really is something that I think about a lot, is just I want to be curious about things. I don't necessarily need to know why or how everything in the universe works. I enjoy mystery, and I don't have the hubris to think that I understand like the things that are significantly larger than me about, life in the universe. But I do really love being curious, just finding things interesting and being intrigued and delighted and entertained. And I think especially with this idea that that I'm going to write this down and people might read it. What I was really thinking about in regards to my audience is like, I want them to read this and go, curious, or like clever, or maybe go, I never would have thought about it like that. And then the next time they watch something, maybe they think about something they didn't think about.
Right.
I don't think that I'm not on some sort of like big mission to change people's worldviews, but if we just got a little curious, that's what I really like about doing this. And it's also, I'm watching movies that I otherwise wouldn't watch sometimes. Which again, for me, adds like a curiosity, right? It pushes on the edges of like my usual interests to see if like there's more room over there for more interest.
Right.
Which is kind of cool.
And I love that, because that is so much more engaging, interesting, more fun than just flat out saying I hate, which is common a lot on the internet. It opens the door to, even if there's a thing that you don't particularly like, you're not coming at it going, I watched this movie today and I didn't like it. You're coming at it going, I watched this movie today and they made some really interesting decisions that I want to break down and talk about. And this meant this and this did this. And you can agree or disagree with what you saw and you can write about it. But I love that you're coming to everything with a baseline level of, the best word I can think of is respect. Respect for the people who made it, respect for the art form, respect for the medium, respect for everything. And I think that is such a cool way to come at this and to view this and to continue writing about it. Because I think that if you came at it from a perspective of trying to tear down and be super, super judgy, it would get exhausting to read.
Yes. It would be exhausting to write. It's just not my wheelhouse. I would say I'm not a hater. We all know that's not true.
Yeah.
But it's not my wheelhouse to like rag on art.
Yeah.
Also, there's a piece of it that is, what I don't want to do is judge what other people might like or not like. Mm-hmm. My goal isn't to be, so for instance, I wrote about Eyes Wide Shut recently. You can read about it in last month's newsletter. And whether or not I liked Eyes Wide Shut, what I thought about the sex scenes isn't the point of me writing Julie Goes to the Movies. Mm-hmm. I found them similar to the way that you described the Skinamax. There was a whole, to get kind of into the weeds of the movie making, there was an insistence on making sure that it got an R rating. And there's spoilers for a movie that came out in 1999, an orgy that happens in this movie. And in being able to film it and keep the R rating, there had to be strategically placed bodies and strategically simulated sex that wasn't visually, to me, communicating eroticism and sexuality. Now, there's an entire read on that to go back to the style of Julie Went to the Movies. You could do an entire read on that about, well, the premise of the film and the point of the orgy had to do with power dynamic and like demonstrations of power and control, and not about pleasure and like enjoyment and like collaborative mutual pleasure. So like there's a whole read that you could do on why it was sort of a sterile orgy. But I don't want to tell people that it's a sterile orgy. Like that's not, I don't want to be like, this movie is not sexy. I care a lot that people feel safe, feel confident, feel empowered to explore their sexuality, explore pleasure in whatever that looks like for them. And it created, in being aware of how much that mattered to me, it created a very conscious awareness for me that opinions often are interpreted as judgment. And if I sit here and go, that's a sterile sex scene, it's a sterile orgy, and someone else that's in their spank bank, like that might make that person feel some kind of way. And I'm not responsible for other people's emotions. I'm allowed to have opinions. That's not it. But why do I need to say that it's a sterile orgy? Right? That's, to me, that's sort of the question. Like, what am I? And to me, the interesting thing about, the orgy seemed so sort of stilted, and it's like, oh, well, Kubrick needed an R rating to be able to release it. And so they had to, like, the studio really came down on the film about how they needed to present this.
Right.
That's the interesting part to me.
Right. And I think this actually reminds me of an interview that I watched with, for years, I've been a fan of the band AFI. And if you're also a fan of AFI, what's up?
Hey.
So I've been a fan of theirs for decades at this point. And I recently watched an interview with their lead singer, Davey Havok.
Is this the one where he's wearing that incredible, like,
and he's got the giant
kaftan?
Yeah, and he's got the giant
and
afro
his hair
and
is
the
super curly.
Yeah.
He looks so great and like comfortable in his body in that interview.
He's always looked great and comfortable in his body.
Yes, that's true. That's true. You are correct about that.
So I'm watching this interview, and he was talking about records that he'd done in the past. And the interview, they kind of do a discussion block on each record that they put out. And they were like, let's talk about The Art of Drowning. And he's like, oh, well, I was this when I was blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about Black Sails in the Sun. Oh, I was this. And they talk about every album, and they've released a ton of albums.
Yeah.
And their sound changes a lot on each album. So he's talking about it. And one album in particular, the band was going through a lot of turmoil. And there was a lot of stress with the label, there was a lot of pressure with their popularity kind of slipping, and just a whole lot of stuff going on. And he put the album together, and he's talking about, he goes, there's one record on the album that I really didn't like, and I really didn't want it to make the final cut. But, our producer was like, it's good, but even now when I listen back to it, I don't like it. And the interviewer was like, which song is it? And he goes, I don't want to say, because someone out there might really connect with the song, and I don't want to ruin it for them if it's one of their favorite songs and then they hear me say it's trash. And I thought that was really cool, because he's saying it's his art. Like, the band made it, and he's allowed to have his opinions on it as an artist, saying really didn't like that one very much. But I don't want to break someone's heart, or I don't want to speak out to what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to tinge anyone's thoughts on it because I don't like it. And now you're starting to second guess yourself. So that's kind of what you're saying, is that, like, you're allowed to have your opinion on things.
Yeah.
but that's your opinion.
Yes.
It can be, you can say this movie is terrible, but art is subjective. It's just terrible to you, but that doesn't, this is not the place for you to say that.
Well, yeah, because it's not what I want to be saying.
Right.
And what I mean by that is like, who am I?
Yeah.
And that's not meant to minimize me. I know who I am. I know what I'm about.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not I like a movie matters 0%.
Mm-hmm.
In my goal of what I'm trying to do, whether or not I like it matters 0%. Me liking it or not liking it, like, I don't know, who wants to read that? And I don't mean that like, I know that people make a living reviewing movies, and that there are lots of people, maybe some of them who were listening to this going like, well, there's criteria for a good movie, and like, I got movie loving friends, but, so I get it, but I want people to enjoy life. It's such a goal to me of like, shed the shame, celebrate, enjoy, find pleasure, and it doesn't, that being my goal, it's like, why would someone want to sit down and read that I didn't like a movie? Like, it just doesn't feel like it's contributing anything fun to the newsletter.
Two things. This could be an easy get-rich-quick scheme if you didn't have any morals. Because what you could do is find out whatever movie, and you guys can steal this formula if you like, it's not new. Find the movie that's almost universally loved, and then trash it.
Yeah.
Because if you trash the movie that people almost universally agree is great, then people will tune in to tell you you're wrong, and then you can profit off that engagement.
I suppose. I'm good. I'll pass on that.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, there are movies that I don't like that are very, very popular. I'm not going to use this platform to tell people why I don't like these movies or even what they are, but like, don't like stuff. Who cares? Like, that's part of figuring yourself out. That's part of it. But what I am hoping is sort of like, at Christmas time, we had those glasses that you put on and you looked at the Christmas tree and the lights looked like gingerbread men or snowmen when you looked at them. Mm-hmm. It was very exciting. I'm sort of hoping to like give people a pair of those. Like, look at the movie, but everybody's a gingerbread man.
Yeah, and you just reminded me of something of me vocalizing that I didn't like a thing. Mm-hmm. This was just a conversation with a friend. And I will share what this thing was that I didn't like because I have a new perspective on it now. Mm-hmm. But I read the book, The Great Gatsby.
Okay.
Hated it.
Okay.
Absolutely hated it. And not just because of the weird, out-of-place anti-Semitism that came out of nowhere. But
that's a good reason to hate it.
Pretend that part didn't exist.
Okay.
But just the story as a whole, I didn't like it. And I told a friend about this, and she was like, really? I love that book. And we sat down and had a conversation. I was like, that's really interesting. Why? And she told me why she loved it. Mm-hmm. And I went, oh, wow. I never looked at it. I never thought to look at it from that perspective. That's completely valid.
Right.
Now I want to go back and reread it from that perspective so I can have a different understanding and a different appreciation of it.
And that's conversational, right? And
yes.
Between, like, there's a trust alliance built between you and friend. Mm-hmm. So there's room for this idea of, like, I'm not being instructive and telling you what to like or not like. And I'm not being judgmental and expressing my opinion that I didn't find this thing to be enjoyable. That requires multi-directional communication. Whereas in a newsletter, it's just me talking at you. Mm-hmm. And it just it will immediately sound instructional and judgmental.
Yes.
No matter how careful I try to be that to not, if it's one directional and you can't come back at me.
Yep.
Because guess what? I don't want to have that conversation. Not necessarily. So to me, your platform matters a lot, right? Mm-hmm. Like, one of my very good friends loves movies. I will tell that person, I will tell him how much I don't like a particular actor, and he'll go, Julie, what about this movie? But what about in this movie? But what about this one? And that's safe. Like, there's that trust alliance, that love and connection and affection that we have for one another that allows for that, like, little bit of razzing, little bit of, like, you know, teasing as a love language that we've established in our relationship. That's not, I can't establish that in a newsletter format, so I don't want to. Also, again, in a newsletter format, I'm not really giving anybody anything interesting by being like, I didn't like this movie.
I have an idea for a podcast. And I'm going to tell everybody this idea because I'm never going to do it. So if you want to steal this, you can. My idea for a podcast is I scan the internet for movie reviews and find the ones that are very critical. Exactly what you're saying you don't want to do. Very critical, very judgy. And I have a podcast called Critiquing the Critics. And I critique their writing and I critique their review. Because some reviews I've seen for movies, I like to read reviews after I see movies.
Yeah, that's fair.
To see if I missed anything or get a different perspective. And some of the reviews I read are so mean-spirited. And I go, well, what if someone was this mean to you about your writing? Wouldn't that hurt your feelings?
And
I'm never going to do that.
Yeah. And reviews are great. Like, they're there. But again, like, it's still one person's trained, even if they are a trained movie reviewer, what they are trained to look for is different than what somebody else is trained to look for. Is different than what somebody who's like, hey, mom, do you want to watch a movie this Thursday night? I'm going to be visiting, is going to be looking for something different entirely. So when I think about the goal of Julie Went to the Movies, there's a couple things. One is, and the one that we're talking about is this idea of, like, what I'm hoping to do is just increase curiosity, just give, like, a playful exploration of a film that is like, hey, what if you looked at it this way? Hey, isn't it interesting how sex was used to communicate this? Or what if that's what they meant when they, utilized this particular sex act here, right? Like, when I talked about Sinners, the whole thing was like, I believe that the like tag of my writing was cunnilingus good, vampire bite bad.
Yes, that was it. Yes.
But that is very thematic of the film. Like, that is something that repeats throughout the film, and I thought that was so interesting. And I just wanted to be like, did you guys also see this? Wasn't this cool? I
am someone who, I watch a movie the first time and I'm just completely just swept away by what is happening. I'm in the back seat and this Uber is taking me on a ride. And I'm not able to pick apart certain things. I'm not able to see certain foreshadowing. I'm not able to see how certain things are set up. I'm just experiencing everything in the moment as it happens. So I watch a movie the first time and I can love it and think it's great. And one of the reasons why I go and read reviews is because I'm like, oh, I wonder what I've missed. Or I wonder what themes or what was the director trying to say that I completely missed out on. And it gives me a reason to want to watch the movie again. Since I know how it's going to end now, I can just focus on these little things and get a whole new appreciation for it. And what you're doing is what I wish more people would do, because even if it's a movie I've seen 10 times, I've never seen it from the perspective of your academic knowledge of all of this stuff and how you pick up on this thing. Or even if the filmmakers never intended for XYZ thing to be a thing,
right?
You can put the pieces together to go, oh, this is something that I've noticed in the movie, and there's also parallels with this. So now I'm understanding this other thing better because of these parallels that you drew in this movie. And I think that's so cool because you're not coming at it as good, bad, movie sucks, movie's great. It's like you said, with the curiosity, it was like, have you ever thought about this? Let me talk to you about this thing. This is pretty cool, right?
What if this was what they meant?
Yeah.
What if they meant this?
And I think you're doing it from a perspective that we don't get nearly enough, which is the sexuality, the eroticism, and the just how this is presented in film is something that, these are conversations that don't happen enough, period, especially not in film.
Yes. Well, and there's, film and sex and film is, has a long history. There was a whole thing for a while talking about the Hayes Act. I started to write a workshop on sexuality in film, and you really can't build a workshop without building an understanding of how many people's hands are in the pot and how how does a movie get made? Well, lots and lots and lots and lots of people with lots and lots of money and opinions all sort of smush their opinions and their money onto the film, and then eventually it comes out. And some people, and that impacts what kind of sexuality can be present in a film, what kind of sex acts can be present in a film, who's allowed to have sex with who in films. There's lots of rules and things that were applied for so long, and still to some extent are with our rating systems. But what I think is interesting about that is how we as viewers receive eroticism and sexuality in film, and how it has evolved over time, and the ebbs and flows and sort of ways in which there's information about what's happening in society, what's normal in society, what we're good and what we consider good and acceptable, and what we consider to be based and hedonistic. And it's just a really interesting place to explore what's going on culturally with sex and sexuality. Is sort of look at what's happening in film in that regard.
Yes, and I think yes, and also films. We talk all the time about how films, music, art is not necessarily trying to portray sex and sexuality in a one-to-one realistic manner. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of times it's for entertainment. So we can't always look to it to give us, you can't look to film to give you the knowledge that you got through your education.
Right.
And through your work.
Yes.
But what's really interesting to me is even with that being true, you can tell a lot about what is happening in a culture or during a time period by what happens in film, because of what people are and aren't allowed to do, what choices they make. Mm-hmm. Or is this married couple sleeping in different beds on these 1960s sitcoms because that's not, you have to sleep in different beds. Is this thing being shown? Is that being shown? I don't think people have realized how much male nudity is much more common now than it used to be, where you just got wieners all over the place in films and TV shows. And I watched a lot of Skinamax as a kid. I watched a lot of Skinamax as a kid. I never saw hog.
Yeah.
But now it's just everywhere. Even though, again, the Skinamax sex wasn't a one-to-one representation of what sex was, and it wasn't trying to be. The fact that I never saw full hog says is telling.
Yes, there were implications and cultural, social narratives, right? The thing I'm always saying is
saw lots of Bush though.
Yeah, and then after late 90s, early 2000s, it really shifted, and you saw very little Bush. Mm-hmm. But so there's an interesting thing there about, because okay. So here's something that I've been thinking about in regards to film while we're on this topic of film. The pendulum swings around, right?
Speaking of wieners.
The name of my sex tape.
That's my sex tape. My sex tape is the pendulum swings around.
But there's a shift so there was like a lot of sex happening in film for a while, and a side effect of that became this conversation that was happening, and that is still really, it's like happening really loudly right now on the internet, that like sex in movies is pointless. And there's a lot of like complaints about too much sex and like too much kissing and too much like sexual play in movies. And okay, like I don't get to decide what people like or don't like, but I do find it really interesting. I do categorically disagree with the idea that sex in movies is pointless. Now, was there a time, like, are we talking strictly about simulated cis white het, like, penetrative sex? Like, I don't need to see that performed over and over again. When it's very performative like that. But it's still likely there for purpose. Something I think about that we've talked about outside of the podcast, you and I, is the understanding as somebody who has interacted with filmmaking that dialogue is not the same thing as conversation.
Yes.
These are very different things.
Yes.
The dialogue requires you to get as straight to the point as you possibly can, as quickly as you can.
Yes.
And there is this interesting thing to me that oftentimes when people consume film and TV, this interesting thing that is the belief that that's how that's real. Mm-hmm. And the sex isn't. Mm-hmm. And it's like the whole thing is entertainment.
Yes.
The dialogue is fake. That's not how conversations work. People do not understand each other that easily at all. Like, clarifying questions are an essential component of collaborative communication. Ask clarifying questions. When you watch TV and movies, you will notice people never need clarifying questions for two reasons. Either one, they need to move the plot along so everybody understands and you get right to the next scene. Or two, the misunderstanding is a plot point and they intentionally misunderstand so that they can get on to the next scene. Mm-hmm. That's a script. That's dialogue. When there's a misunderstanding in conversation, it's not narratively interesting. It's just frustrating.
Right.
And so similarly, I think about how that misunderstanding moves over into sex as well, where people start to look at sex in film and don't see it as part of they're taking it in as like, this is sex happening, not necessarily this is part of the film. Mm-hmm. And so I think that sex in movies is plot relevant. Maybe there was a window of time where it wasn't, but to me, people have sex for so many reasons. And, sometimes people have sex because they're bored, because it's Tuesday, because they are, horny, because they know that they want to be close to their partner. And even though they haven't felt super aroused, they want to experience that closeness, and so they've set aside that time and they're going to engage. And maybe that sex isn't penetrative, but they have sex play because it matters and it's important to them. 100,000 million reasons to have sex. If for no other reason than to communicate to the audience that your character sometimes makes decisions based on pleasure or interest or pursuit of pleasure, or like, sex is so human, and sometimes sex might seem off plot, but it also could just be showing you that the character you're watching is a human.
Yeah. I have a funny example to give, but you know, it's sex can, anything in a movie can be pointless, and anything in a movie can drive a plot forward. And it's interesting to me that sex is under this microscope of, if someone sees a movie and they say this sex scene is pointless. Well, there's movies with chase scenes that are pointless. There's movies with fight scenes that are pointless. There's also movies with chase scenes and fight scenes that move the plot forward. Most oftentimes they do. So it's funny to me that sex is under this scrutiny of there's too much of it. Mm-hmm. Is there too much crying in a movie? Is there too much, are there too many bank robberies in movies? Are there too many gunfights in movies? Why is sex get scrutinized?
Yeah, I think to me, like the thing to me is it feels like the wrong interpretation. And I say that very timidly, I know. But to me, it's like this using sex as this to communicate insert thing here is what is the criticism. In other words, like, oh, these people like each other? Well, they should fuck. Like, there are other, like, expanding on ways to communicate that sort of thing. I can understand being like, could we try something other than like PIV under a blanket and then have someone be like, like, let's get creative. It feels like that's more, like that would feel more beneficial as like a criticism, so to speak.
By the way, that's my sex tape name, PIV under a blanket. Sorry, continue.
But I think it is challenging to not, I would challenge people to also be aware, to like pay attention. What are we criticizing exactly? Yes, there's more sex in films now. There's also more queer sex in films. There's also more black sex in films. There's also more sex like that is fun, that is awkward. There is more sex that doesn't go as planned. There's sex that isn't penetrative. There's this, like, as sex gets a broader definition and is represented by a broader population across films, because more people of more gender representation and racial representation and all these different cultural demographics are making films, then we're seeing more sex in more ways. Why are we now complaining that there's too much sex? It's just a little suspicious to me.
I will say, there was one complaint that I have about sex in movies. Mm-hmm. And it's not a recent thing. This was a thing that was a problem for me, again, growing up in the 90s, the mid to late 90s. I was a huge fan, and I know some of you out there can relate. I was a huge fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. Mm-hmm. And when I say I know some of you can relate, I'm talking specifically to you, Joe. Because I know you can relate to what I'm about to say. But I was a big fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, and also just action movies in general, where a guy just beats people up and blows things up.
Bad guys.
Yeah, the bad guys, which also, as an adult, I realized happen to be minorities. But, whatever.
Well, late 80s, it was Russian.
Yeah, right. It's hard to go back and enjoy these movies. But I would watch these movies, but my complaint with the sex scenes was they were always so random and unexpected. Mm-hmm. So things got real awkward when I'm trying to watch the movie with my parents.
Funny you say that. I was home for the holidays visiting my family, and my dad and I were watching a show, and we were having a enjoyable time watching this show, and there is a conflict between a woman who's trying to like gain power at work and a man that she's trying to gain that power from. Like, they're in a power struggle. And they are having this interaction, and it's very funny. My dad and I are like, haha, that's funny. And then they cut, and the next scene is her being absolutely railed doggy style tits bouncing towards the camera, and she has the most bored look on her face, and the guy behind her is going, "You like that? Isn't this so good? This is so good. This is so hot." And he's like just absolutely like jackhammering into her. And I was just like, not embarrassed. And I realized that that has been a shift for me in like adulthood, and also doing this job and talking about sex so publicly like this in this setting, that it's like, it was a very jarring scene to cut. Like the cut was very jarring. But again, I wouldn't say it was pointless, right? Like, she gets up in the middle of sex and she's like, "Sorry, I'm just distracted." And to me, that communicates, like, you can't communicate that in any other way. You could maybe film the scene differently if you wanted it to be less blatantly, like, with less blatant nudity. But the idea that she says a couple things in this scene that I thought were really great. She said, "Sorry, I was just distracted by work, and also sometimes my mind wanders when you fuck me from behind." And it's like, oh, this is open, honest communication about what is working and not working in their sexual relationship. And also, like, this is it represents something very real and human, which is like, oh, I want to have sex, I want to be connected with my partner, I want to do these things, but also my job is in the way.
Right.
And that's like a real, and like, yeah, they could have shown her like sitting at a table being like, ah, and then he comes in and is like, "What's wrong, honey? I can't stop thinking about work." Like, there are other ways to script it, but it was to me, a significantly more effective scene to include the like blatant sexual behavior.
Right.
Even watching it with my dad, it is what it is. Sex happens, and when you're watching stories about life, sex is there. It's part of life for a lot of people.
I'm sure it comes with your job. Your comfort with being able to do that comes from your job, comes from the work you do, comes from your age. When I was 14 and 15, I am just an anxious person in general, okay? And I didn't want to deal with the awkwardness of me being in a room when there's titties on the TV, and then I have to worry about it. And then I'm sure my parents are to me, in my brain, this is weird for my parents, because what do? Do they kick me out of the room? Do they change the channel? So whenever there would be a movie on that I had seen multiple times and I knew titties were coming up, I would just go, "I gotta leave the room." So like, when I knew that titties were coming up and titties were on the, titties were around the corner, I would just be like, "All right, I'm gonna go get some juice and make a bologna and cheese sandwich. I'll be right back." And then I'm in the kitchen and I'm just like waiting. I'm hearing the moans and like the sex music, and I'm just waiting for it to end. And then I just happen to walk back in after the bologna, like with the bologna and cheese sandwich, after the scene is over. Because I did not know how to navigate that situation.
I think it's a really, for us at that age especially, like, if and depending on what kind of relationship one has with their parents, and like how much of a sex talk they've gotten, whether they've gotten like one sit down birds and bees, here's a condom, go, like, don't get anybody pregnant sort of conversation, or if they've had ongoing comprehensive sexuality conversations growing up, like, it's going to really affect how you interact with something like that.
Okay. And there was also unexpected titties at times too.
Yes. And I will say, like, that particular genre was always interesting to me. Like, so like a Julie Goes to the Movies read, right? Like, let's talk about like masculinity and how masculinity is represented in different genres of film, right? So in that particular style of film, those particular action films from the 90s, masculinity was two things: punching and fucking.
So
Why are you laughing? I said a very serious thing.
I'm laughing because I'm imagining a movie that comes out called Punch Fucker. Like, anyway, go ahead.
There's a Community joke where they watch a movie called Kick Puncher.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, like that was it. That was what, and so like those films were very much about masculinity, or at least this was my read on these films. If you disagree, that's totally fine, because you also watched them and had your own lived experience of that. But to me, these films were very much representative, like how to be a man. Like, this is instructional. You punch and you fuck. That's what you do. And it was cool, and like I was enthralled by these films. Who knows what that says about my understanding of masculinity at any given time, but it was very much like those titties weren't random. They were there to reinforce an understanding that this dude doesn't just punch, he also fucks. Why are you laughing? I'm being so serious right now.
Yes, you are absolutely right. Yes, you are absolutely right. This dude, yes, that is exactly what happened. I agree. It's funny because it's true.
Yes.
That's why it's funny. It's funny because it's true, because these movies were so one-dimensional. And I'm also laughing because these movies were so one-dimensional, and I really, like, I don't know how to explain how obsessed I was with these movies, with Universal Soldier, with Terminator, with True Lies, with all of these movies.
What's the one where he has pocket sand?
Oh gosh, the very end of oh man, I'm going to make so many people upset, because it's the very last battle, and it's Jean-Claude Van Damme, and he throws the pocket sand in his face, and his vision gets blurry, and he's like, ugh.
Yes, why can't I think of what movie that is?
You know what? I'm going to be upset.
Bloodsport.
Bloodsport. Yes.
Bloodsport.
Yes. Bloodsport. The pocket sand. Yes. And, but I watched those movies, and I was obsessed with those movies. Obsessed about, how to be hyper masculine, like at the formative years of just being a kid and growing into teenage years, and like, this is how you be a man, and it's just like, look at me now.
Right. But the thing is I also loved those movies, and I wanted to punch and fuck, but like, look at me now. You know what I mean? Like, it's I still want to punch and fuck, but like, it's so rooted in this, like, what you get out of it is not necessarily what it's trying to give you.
Right.
And that's okay. But I think that oftentimes when people go into movies with an expectation that it should give them this, it should give me this, and then there's titties, and they were like, well, I don't want titties. Then they're like, there's too much sex in movies. And I'm like, buddy, you're not the only one watching the movie.
Yeah.
And to me, titties was, like, watching those movies was a great way to see titties. And as a person who was figuring out that I really had this broad sexual orientation, it was helpful. Like, they helped me understand myself, and that mattered. And I think that oftentimes when we go into films, when we have this limited expectation, we create this really narrow lens of what a film should be. It should be this. And then stuff happens outside of that narrow lens, and we get really hypercritical about it. It's like, well, why did you watch it in the first place?
Yes.
Like, and this, I think, can also just, this will be the thing that I say that'll be like, and then eventually we'll have an episode about this. But so much of what I find comes from this place of like criticism and frustration is all kind of seems to be directly tied to this lack of skill in being able to be uncomfortable. Like, you came up with a coping mechanism, which was, I'm going to go make a bologna and cheese sandwich because it's uncomfortable for me to sit in the room and look at titties when my parents are also in the room. That's a coping mechanism, and it worked for you. I have gotten to a place where I'm like, it's a little awkward that there's doggy style fucking on television while I'm watching this show in the middle of the day on Christmas Boxing Day with my dad. But it's a good show, and I can handle this, right? Like, there's a coping mechanism there of, like, I can handle this discomfort. It's a little awkward, but it's not anything that we need to, like, freak out about.
Yeah, you're also not going, like, to your dad, like, damn, she taking that dick. No.
She wasn't. She was bored. Which was the point. Which was why it was actually, to me, a very essential scene in the show.
You're like, he is taking her to Pound Town. She does not want to go.
She is not. She is bored. Pound Town has nothing for her right now. But I think there is this thing of, like, people have not built. There are a lot of people who just have not built skills to, like, A, be self-aware enough to recognize that they're feeling uncomfortable. And B, be curious enough to have some curiosity about why they're uncomfortable. What about this makes me feel awkward and uncomfortable? Maybe I should explore that. Mm-hmm. And then C, to have the mechanisms and the skills and the tools to be able to understand that discomfort isn't scary. It isn't something that they need to run away from, and that and D, that even if it is something that they decide ultimately they don't want to participate in, it doesn't mean that nobody else should be allowed to participate in it either. I want movies where people punch and fuck.
And I think, what better way to end this episode? But I do think that if just listening to what you said, if we could kind of sum up your Julie Goes to the Movie segment in the newsletter, it's you want to move away from what movies should be, and you're talking about what movies could be.
Yes.
So you're giving people, which I think is brilliant, a different way to view movies. Even if it's a movie you've already seen, you've seen a bunch of times, maybe you haven't seen it through this lens.
Yeah.
Maybe you haven't seen it through this perspective. Maybe you didn't see this. Maybe you didn't notice this, because you do have a unique way of viewing a lot of movies. You and I have had discussions about movies that both of us have seen, and movies that I love, that I like, all right, we both watched that exact same movie. We saw the exact same thing happen. We both watched it for the first time. This is what it's about. It's about saving the world. And then you can come to me and be like, yeah, the saving the world stuff was cool, but did you notice how it was a commentary on the such and such, and how they did this, and how this was actually like foreshadowing this, and how they did this because this, and I'm just like, oh my gosh.
I'm a delight.
How did you notice that? And then now I got to watch it again because I missed all of that.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool. And I think it's cool that you are writing about this in a newsletter. And I think everybody should read it.
I hope everybody does.
All of you.
I will continue to write about movies. I don't promise that I will watch recommendations, but you can send them.
Do Universal Soldier.
I want a movie where people punch and fuck.
Yes. Well, I think that'll do it. We went slightly over the time that we had set. So
if you think that it's cool that I write about movies and you want more people to read about my movies, then you gotta like, comment, and subscribe so that more people will see the videos, so that then they'll also hear me talk about Universal Soldier and punching and fucking, and then they'll also read the newsletter, and then I'll get to write about movies more.
Universal Soldier is such a good movie.
It really is.
Gosh. Okay. Well, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for looking at our short about nut maxing over 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. And we will be back next week. Oh, by the way, we've changed our posting schedule a little bit.
Yes.
So we're posting every Tuesday morning now at 7 a.m. Tuesdays at 7 a.m. brand new episodes of Bedroom Brainiacs. Tuesdays. And that'll do it for us.
Bye.
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 Bye.